Back in 2009, Sucker Punch released inFAMOUS, which was an influential game for the superhero genre. inFAMOUS reinvented the superpower tropes and put twists and turns on it. inFAMOUS was also a really influential game for Sucker Punch, because before inFAMOUS, all they made was Sly Cooper, a completely different game from inFAMOUS. I feel like inFAMOUS was a gem that was passed under people's radar. So today I'm going to be going in depth talking about inFAMOUS. But before I do, if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe if you're new. And without further ado, let's get into the nostalgia trip of the game, inFAMOUS.
He leaped toward me, his icy fingers digging into my head. For a moment,
inFAMOUS looks really good. Everything is very dark and edgy, and you feel like you're never safe in the city. The graphics in the game still look great today, which shows how much the power of the PS3 had, and how much detail Sucker Punch put into this game. You can see that Sucker Punch wants to use the full potential of the PS3, and I commend Sucker Punch for that. The cutscenes in this game look spectacular. Having comic book aesthetics are a great choice to have in the important cutscenes of the game. Empire City looks horrible, which was Sucker Punch's intention. Empire City looks dark and muddy, and there's garbage everywhere in the city. There's mainly 3 districts in Empire City. The Neon District that has neon signs and tall buildings in scale. The Historic District is where the bomb went off, so there's not that much in it. And there's the Warren, which is pretty boring. Overall, the districts are distinct enough to keep you entertained, but it's nothing special. Empire City is really big, almost too big. The city is really big in the scale, so traversing through the city can be a little tough at times, which I'll be talking about in a later part of the video. The music in inFAMOUS is also really good. It fits the game very well, and it comes in clutch and action moments. Most of the music here is pretty good and fits the theme. I can't put it in here for copyright reasons, but go search it up. inFAMOUS music, it's great, no question about it. Overall, the presentation in inFAMOUS looks great. The attention to detail looks great, especially for the PS3. But now, let's talk about one of the most important factors in inFAMOUS, the karma system.
but I can trigger a riot, help keep the heat off seeking me. Of course, that means a lot of innocent people will get the hell kicked out of them.
I really love the karma system in inFAMOUS. Basically, the karma system here is that sometimes in missions you'll get a good or bad choice. Like for example, one of the early missions in the game, you find crates with food in them. You can either give the food to the citizens, since they also do need the food, or you can shoot the civilians and keep the food for yourself and Zeke. One choice is morally wrong, but both choices make sense. You could give the food to the people and make sure they're fed and don't starve, but on the other hand, you're the only person that can save the city, so it would make sense if you kept the food for yourself to be at full strength. All of the choices in inFAMOUS make sense. That's why I love the karma meter. The karma meter also affects how the citizens see you. If you're inFAMOUS, the city will hate you and try to hurt you if they get the chance. But if you're a hero, the citizens will be grateful to you and be civil to you. Even when you pause the game, depending on your karma meter, you'll either see a chill Cole in a heroic pose at the pause screen, or a demonic evil Cole on the pause screen. You'll also get good or bad codes depending on your karma rank in the story. The karma meter isn't all good though. Depending on if you're good or bad, some of the decisions or some of the missions mainly make no sense. Some missions you have to save people even though you're evil, which makes no sense, for example. But I'll forgive this since this was Sucker Punch's first attempt at making a story with the good or bad karma meter. And that's honestly the only bad thing I can say about karma, showing how good of a job Sucker Punch did on the karma system.
Water was pouring in and the place was falling apart. With no way back, I went forward into the slums of the Warren.
The traversal in inFAMOUS is just okay. At the start of the game, you don't even have any traversal abilities, and when you do get traversal abilities, it's really not that good. The city is also really big in scale for the traversal, thus making traversal not that good in the gameplay. Gameplay is also very clunky as well, making traversal uncomfortable. At the very least, the good thing about traversal, or just the movement in general, is that you can basically go anywhere and climb on anything, which makes traversal just bearable, but overall traversal is not good in inFAMOUS. Not really, at least. The main thing that people love or gravitate to in inFAMOUS games are the powers. In this game, the power you have is electricity, which is powerful and pretty badass. The power progression in inFAMOUS is great. At the start of the game, you basically have nothing, but by the end of the game, you feel like a god. The powers are all good, and none of them are overpowered in my opinion. You have your basic vaults, which are good even until the end of the game. They barely do damage, but they're good because they don't use any of your energy meter, making it very useful. The shockwave is also good. It's simple but effective. The grenade is also really great, one of my favorites, because you can basically throw the grenade as far as you can and hits multiple enemies. You also have the Presumptive Shot, which is basically a closer version of the vault, but it takes all of your energy meter. Well, not all of it, but most of it, so I don't really use this power up that much. The electric missile is also really good at taking crowds. The thunder drop is also pretty good. It's good at dropping on enemies, and you also have the electric shield, which is good for certain scenarios, but not really that effective. You also have your melee attacks, which are good in close combat, but barely do any damage, and the enemies always run away from you, so you don't really see yourself using melee too much in combat. And last but certainly not least is the Lightning Storm. The Lightning Storm demolishes your opponents. There's also a Karmic Overload where you don't lose any energy, which might sound pretty OP, but it's really not, since you can only use it for a short period of time, and when you use it, you have to wait a long while to use it again. Overall, all the powers in the game are great. inFAMOUS is known for its powers, so I'm not surprised that the powers are all great in the game. The missions in inFAMOUS are really repetitive. Sometimes you'll be doing the same task multiple times, making the missions super tedious and super boring super easily. Like in multiple missions, you'll be going to the several sewers and recharging the substations. This will be fine, but you do this for like 2/4 of the missions in the game, making it super tedious, especially when you have to go from point A to point B, because it takes so long to traverse through this giant city. So overall, the missions were hit or miss for me. The missions aren't really that good in inFAMOUS. The enemies in inFAMOUS aren't good in my opinion, or more like the AI isn't good in my opinion. The AI is way too OP in the game, even on the easier difficulties. Some enemies can 1 or even 2 hit you. This might be because I'm not good at inFAMOUS, but I still want to include it in here either way. Let's talk about the boss fights in inFAMOUS. The first boss fight you have to do is versus Sasha. Sasha's boss fight is pretty boring. All you have to do is shoot her with your electricity until she's down, then rinse and repeat. It's pretty boring. The next boss fight you have to do is also versus Aladin, and it's pretty much the same thing as Sasha's. He just throws some stuff at you, you have to dodge them and shoot him with grenades and vaults until he's down. And it's sadly the same thing for Kessler's boss fight. Kessler's boss fight is the same as Sasha and Aladin's, but it's a bit better because it has some plot significance, or major plot significance. But overall, the boss fights in inFAMOUS aren't good, which is such a shame because inFAMOUS Second Son's boss fights are really good in my opinion.
Time to mold me into the savior he failed to be, going so far as to kill the woman he loved.
The story in inFAMOUS goes like this. A guy named Cole McGrath delivers a package that explodes several city blocks and kills thousands of lives. Cole then wakes up a few weeks later seeing the city in ruins. Cole also has electric abilities from the explosion. Cole tries to escape the city but runs into an FBI agent named Moya. Moya tells Cole to find the bomb that was set off at the start of the game and her husband named John. If Cole does that, then Moya will let Cole and Zeke leave Empire City. Cole then has a run-in with Kessler, seeing a version of the future. Cole then barely escapes from the First Sons, a group of powerful super soldiers. A couple missions later, we track down the bomb that was set off in Empire City called the Ray Sphere. Zeke takes it and gives it to Kessler, hoping for power and glory. Cole then goes to the Ray Sphere, but before that, he meets up with John, with him saying that he does not know anything about Moya. So John and Cole team up to find the Ray Sphere on their own. They find the Ray Sphere, but it consumes John. So Cole and Kessler have one final battle, and Kessler reveals to be Cole from the future and warns him about the Beast.
That she'd found me, somehow believing I could be trusted, ready to make me an offer. I go back to the city.
The story here is okay. It holds up apart from the Kessler being Cole from the future thing. I feel like the characters in the story really are what makes the story interesting, like Zeke for example. He's a great character from start to finish, being Cole's friend but being selfish and giving the Ray Sphere to Kessler for power of his own, which kind of makes sense, especially on the evil version of the playthrough, because Cole uses his power for domination instead of helping people. Cole is a relatable protagonist, and you really feel for him in some of the story beats. Triss is also a weird character because even if you're kind to her, she won't give you the time of day. And she's not in the game too much because she dies at the end, and she doesn't really have an impact. The villains like the Reapers and Kessler are pretty solid and have good enough motivations. Overall, the characters in inFAMOUS feel real and grounded, and the story's good enough.
Burned into my brain. I take one last look down at myself, my future self, and turn away. the rage curdling inside.
Overall, I had a good time with inFAMOUS, but also had a lot of problems with it, like the traversal, mission design, and boss fights. It was a rocky road, but inFAMOUS is still a great game and a must play if you haven't yet. This game is awesome, and I can't wait to cover the sequel. Sucker Punch showed they knew what they were doing with inFAMOUS, and inFAMOUS was a great foundation for future games in the franchise. Thank you guys for watching and sticking around for the end here. I really appreciate all the support. I don't really know what else to say here. I try to make the video a little more flashy. That's why you probably saw flashy edits and stuff like that. And I hope I achieved that goal. My next video, I don't know. I have so many videos I want to cover. Expect to see an Arkham video and a Spider-Man video in the future. I know this end cousin here is pretty short, but I don't really have anything else to say. Just grab it if you want to see more. And have a great rest of your day. Till next time.